So I'm gonna address the elephant in the room. Yes, I'm back on YouTube posting all of my videos. What is going on, everybody? Hope everybody's doing well, and let me just say this. This is a big year for me career-wise as I search for full-time opportunities in the NBA, and the best thing for me to do right now is keep my work as visible as I humanly can. This is actually part 1 of my 3-part scouting series that was originally posted on Patreon overviewing the Nets' newest acquisitions, and if you can't tell from the title, yes, I'm going over Patty Mills. But before we get into anything, be sure to subscribe below. Now let's do this. Patty Mills is a capital S shooter, and like any great shooter, he can set up his shot in a variety of ways with his footwork. He can utilize the hop to give himself a little extra space from his defender by, well, hopping into his shot. On other plays, he'll come off a curl and get into more of a 1-2 step to spin and square up into his release. If a defender closes out to him hard, he can utilize a sidestep to avoid the flyby closeout when the defender quite literally flies on by. The thing that sticks out to me about Patty Mills is just how much he moves around the floor. This play is almost Steph Curry-esque. And of course, do note that he uses the 1-2 step again to get into his release. Here, he basically crosses up his defender, but off the ball by faking back and forth with his movement. And then check out the hard plant he takes to fully square up to the basket. Because of his ability to move around, I really like the set motion strong or away as a good option for him, which is a play for an off-ball player that involves him running from the corner to the top of the key around 2 screens that face the same direction. But he can do more than just move around frantically off ball to create space. He's also got the micro movements down to be a great shooter, like this subtle relocation to the corner when his defender, Aaron Naismith, gets caught going for the steal. Here's another great relocation. He creeps up toward the top of the 3-point line, and when Tatum turns his back on him, he reverses back to his original location. Here's perhaps my favorite example. On this specific play, DeMar DeRozan and Jakob Poeltl get into a pick and roll, and when the action is shut down initially after Nikola Jokic shows, DeRozan and Poeltl engage in a second pick and roll, this time much closer to the rim. Poeltl rolls, Michael Porter Jr., the low man, is forced to tag by briefly accounting for Poeltl on the roll before hopefully recovering back to his man. And right as Michael Porter Jr. tags, Mills rises up the wing to get a better angle for the 3-point shot. Mills is such a good shooter that he can actually create shots for others just by standing still. Here, the Nets allow an open corner 3-point shot instead of letting Patty Mills shoot in transition. Just a testament to his gravity. Speaking of that gravity, the Spurs regularly used him as a screener, either to create mismatches for his teammates, which he does here by giving Rudy Gay the mismatch with Jeff Teague, or by setting the screen and popping to the 3 himself, though DeRozan probably misses the open look for Mills here. By the way, the Nets use their shooters Landry Shamet, Tyler Johnson, and Joe Harris as screeners all the time. And as a screener, Patty Mills is pretty good at laying screens with contact. The one negative I had with Mills honestly relates to his size at just 6 feet tall. Bigger wings can crowd his airspace on his release, but realistically, how many times is he going to go up against big wings on a roster with the big 3? I look at Mills as more of an off-ball player on this Nets team with Kyrie Irving, James Harden, and Kevin Durant. And just watching him, he honestly seems more comfortable not taking the ball up the floor with regularity, and instead detonating off the catch at will. That said, he did get plenty of pick and roll reps as a Spur. As a shooter at heart, he will at many times use the pick and roll to give himself a toe on the line 3. He's also got some unique athleticism traits. He is incredibly quick at running backwards, which sounds kind of odd. But on this high pick and roll, he basically moonwalks into a 3-pointer. It's just a really unique way to set up your shot. He isn't someone with a crazy array of dribble moves, at least not in succession. And again, because of his size, he's prone to getting his pull-up shots affected. Both of these things, his size and his not elite handle, contribute to him having a much lower pull-up 3-point percentage. Much of his 2-point scoring out of the pick and roll is done from the mid-range. This chart, courtesy of Cleaning the Glass, shows his shot frequency from each zone. Blue means low volume, orange means high volume. And as you can tell, lots of orange from 3 and the long mid-range, right? And to me, all of that jump shooting and not really getting to the rim, we'll get into that in just a second, means that he's a little more prone to shooting slumps. And we saw that in the final 2 months of last season. So as I just alluded to, my big problem with Mills as a pick and roll player is that he does not pressure the paint at all. Going back to the shot frequency chart, Mills is regularly between the 10th and the 20th percentile in at-rim shots, which is pretty low. And by stopping in his tracks here for the pull-up shot, he doesn't put any pressure on the backtracking Jonas Valanciunas, either with a close at-rim shot or a pass to the big. One of Mills' favorite reads out of the pick and roll is to utilize that snake dribble to get to one of his favorite spots, that right elbow. And because he likes to get to that shot so much, a smart big man like Al Horford will play Mills in the pick and roll for that favorite spot, that right elbow, knowing that he won't really pressure the cup. When Mills does find his way to the rim, he tends to settle for layups high off the glass. Part of this relates to his size. If he throws it higher in the air off the glass, it's harder for the defender to get to. And then the other part of it is that he just isn't all that physical of a rim finisher. He doesn't use his body to create space for layups, and that leads to a higher degree of difficulty when trying to make layups. Oh, and don't be expecting him to create his own shot in these situations where he has a big switch out onto him. In the examples that I found, Mills was more than happy to pass out of these advantages. This last clip summarizes just about everything I've said about Patty Mills so far. At his best, he's just an off-ball player. And all those comparisons to Spencer Dinwiddie are pretty silly. They are the complete opposite in terms of basketball players. I want to touch briefly on his passing before we get into his defense. He has been a low assist percentage guy for most of his career. He can make the basic reads, a pocket pass in the pick and roll. Sometimes those passes will have a little bit of flair. And if the screener is a shooter, he can make the pass when his teammate slips out of the screen, or ghosts the screen, as some might call it. But in just watching a whole bunch of Patty Mills film, I did not see any examples of lobs to his bigs, nor advanced Harden-esque skip passes to the corner. Simply put, he's a pretty basic passer. Oh, and much like his scoring, his size and unwillingness to pressure the basket hurts him as a passer. Had he taken this one all the way to the rack and dribbled underneath a la Steve Nash, I bet that turns into a corner three-point shot, which is exactly what happens here. As a defender, and I've mentioned this in videos before, his best skill is getting around screens. As mentioned when discussing his shooting, he has some unique athleticism. Not only is he quick at running backwards, but he's also quite speedy running side to side, which is also a little bit Steph Curry-ish. And here, he uses those unique movement skills to literally throw himself around Grant Williams, and then uses short, choppy steps to accelerate and contest Peyton Pritchard's miss. It's also incredibly easy for him to slalom between screens, and this is where I'd say his size is actually an advantage. Where his size does hurt him is if his matchup gets a step on him. He just doesn't have the length to make up any ground in those situations. And twitchy athletes can maneuver right past him. Plus, given how easily the Nets tend to switch, I'm looking at the Boston series with Blake Griffin, I can imagine that elite creators will hunt these smaller Mills down for mismatches, like James Harden does here. The Spurs predominantly hid Mills in the corner to guard non-scoring threats, players that aren't especially active off-ball, or off-ball players that can't really dribble just because Mills is so good at getting through screens. So given that he's mostly stashed in the corners, he's regularly the last line of defense when opposing offenses break through. According to how NBA help defense is taught, he would be the low man in this situation, tasked with providing secondary help just because of his location in the weak side corner. A side note, I love him contesting the shot with his inside hand to avoid the foul. Granted, because of his height, and I'm sorry to keep harping on this, he doesn't always offer the best secondary rim protection when it's his duty to stop breaches as the low man. As a whole, I find his positioning to be really sound when he's not guarding the ball. When the Spurs trap in the corner, Mills does a nice job of zoning up Jeff Green and Mike James. Of course, positioning isn't everything, and as a help defender, he wasn't always active. This dig to dislodge the ball from Bruce Brown was not especially aggressive nor effective, and yet when he does help more aggressively, it sometimes gets him into trouble because he just doesn't have a ton of length nor size to make up for his mistakes. Had Peyton Pritchard not hesitated, this would have been a 3. And just thinking out loud, I wonder if his sometimes timid nature as a help defender is a reflection of self-awareness. He just doesn't have the physical tools to play a gutsy game and go for steals. And just to put some data behind that claim, he's been a low steal percentage guy since turning 30 years of age. I mean, just last year, he recorded a steal percentage of 1.1%, which ranks within the 21st percentile at his position. And his 1.3 deflections ranks pretty low among guards under 6 feet 4 inches tall. He's just not a super disruptive defender. All in all, it's tough to dislike the Patty Mills signing for the Brooklyn Nets. I expect Mills to mostly be used as an off-ball player, and I'm just gonna assume he's gonna be excellent at that. And while I'm sure he'll run pick and rolls on occasion, I really would prefer if he shares the floor with another elite creator. Defensively, though he is great at navigating screens, I'm not sure how much that'll matter in Brooklyn's switch everything scheme. And though there are games where I worry that he may be targeted off the floor, I wouldn't call him a defined negative in that category. And that in itself is a win. But with that, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe, and go ahead and share on Twitter and Reddit. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more of my content, follow me on Twitter, the link is below, and go ahead and support your boy on Patreon. My Patreon effectively works as a tip jar now. There's a $2 option or a $5 option. The only thing they really unlock is what I call early bird access. You'll be able to watch my videos 12 hours before they eventually go up on YouTube. But really the main idea is that you help me stay afloat during this upcoming 2021-2022 season. But that's all I got today, folks. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Peace!